Compulsion of Happiness. Pain is a complex cultural structure. Its presence and meaning within society depend on forms of rule. The pre-modern society of torture had an intimate relationship with pain. Its dreams of power were, in fact, filled with cries of pain. Pain served as a means of rule. The grim festival, the cruel rituals of torture, the glamorous staging of pain, they all stabilize the ruling power. Tortured bodies are insignia of power. In the course of the transition from torture to the disciplinary society, the attitude to pain changed. In Discipline and Punish, Foucault points out that the disciplinary society uses pain in more discrete forms, subjecting it to a disciplinary calculation. Punishment of a less immediately physical kind, a certain discretion in the art of inflicting pain, a combination of more subtle, more subdued sufferings, deprived of their visible display. Should not all this be treated as a special case, as an incidental effect of deeper changes? And yet the fact remains that a few decades saw the disappearance of the tortured, dismembered, amputated body, symbolically branded on face or shoulder, exposed alive or dead to public view. The body as the major target of penal repression disappeared. Tortured bodies are no longer appropriate in a disciplinary society oriented towards industrial production. Disciplinary power manufactures docile bodies as a means of production. Pain, too, is integrated into techniques of discipline. The ruling powers continue to maintain a relationship with pain. Through the use of pain, orders and prohibitions are engraved in the mind of the obedient subject, even implanted in its body. In the disciplinary society, pain plays a constructive role. It forms the human being into a means of production. But pain is no longer displayed publicly. It is moved into closed disciplinary spaces, such as prisons, military barracks, institutions, factories, or schools. The disciplinary society has a fundamentally affirmative relationship with pain. Junger describes discipline as the way man maintains contact with pain. Junger's worker, in particular, is a disciplinary figure. He hardens in his encounters with pain. In the heroic life which strives incessantly to stay in contact with pain, one aims at hardening oneself like steel. The disciplined face is closed. It possesses clear direction. But the delicate face of a sensitive individual is nervous, pliant, changing, and open to the most diverse kinds of influences and impulses. Pain is a necessary element of the heroic picture of the world. In his futurist manifesto, Counter Pain, 𝘱𝘠𝘭𝘪𝘢 writes, "The more laughter one can discover in pain, the more profound one is. One cannot laugh truly without having first dug into the depths of human pain." According to the heroic worldview, life must be arranged in such a way that it is armed against pain. The body, as the place where pain occurs, is subjugated to a higher order. Of course, this presupposes a command center which regards the body as a distant outpost that can be deployed and sacrificed in battle. Junger juxtaposes heroic discipline with the sensitivity of the bourgeois subject, whose body is not an outpost, not a means for a higher purpose. The bourgeois subject's sensitive body is, rather, an end in itself. It has lost the horizon of meaning that made pain appear as something endowed with meaning. The secret of modern sensitivity is that it corresponds to a world in which the body is itself the highest value. This observation explains why modern sensitivity relates to pain as a power to be avoided at all costs, because here, pain confronts the body not as an outpost, but as the main force and essential core of life itself. In the post-industrial and post-heroic age, The body is neither outpost nor means of production. Unlike the disciplinary body, the hedonistic body, which likes and enjoys itself without any relation to a higher purpose, develops a hostile attitude towards pain. To the hedonistic body, pain appears wholly senseless and without purpose. Today's performance subject differs fundamentally from the disciplinary subject, nor is it a worker in Jung's sense. In the neoliberal performative society, negativities such as orders, prohibitions, and punishments give way to positivities such as motivation, self-optimization, and self-realization. Disciplinary spaces are replaced with zones of well-being. Pain loses any connection with power and rule. It is depoliticized and becomes merely a matter for medicine. Be happy is the new formula of rule. The positivity of happiness pushes aside the negativity of pain. Happiness is employed as positive emotional capital to ensure that individuals possess a permanent capacity to perform. The neoliberal dispositif of happiness is highly efficient because the principles of self-motivation and self-optimization allow for almost effortless domination. The subjugated are not even aware of their subjugation. They think they are free. They exploit themselves without the need for any external compulsion, and in doing so, they believe that they are realizing themselves. Freedom is not curtailed, but exploited. The appeal to be free produces a compulsion that is far more devastating than the injunction, be obedient. Within the neoliberal regime, even power appears in a positive form. It becomes smart. In contrast to repressive disciplinary power, smart power does not cause pain. Power becomes altogether decoupled from pain. It can do without repression. Subjugation takes place through self-optimization and self-realization. Smart power operates in seductive and permissive ways. Because it parades itself as freedom, it is less obvious than repressive disciplinary power. Surveillance also takes on a smart form. We are constantly asked to communicate our needs, wishes, and preferences, to tell our life stories. Total communication, total surveillance, pornographic exposure, and panoptic surveillance coincide. Freedom and surveillance become indistinguishable. The neoliberal dispositif of happiness distracts us from the actual existing form of domination by forcing us into psychological introspection. It ensures that all are preoccupied with their own psyches rather than interested in critically questioning their social conditions. The suffering society creates is privatized and psychologized. What must be fixed, some would have us believe, are not social but psychological conditions. In fact, the call for psychological optimization is a way of adapting us to the existing form of domination and veiling social ills. Thus, positive psychology marks the end of revolution. Instead of revolutionaries, we have motivational speakers who come on the scene in order to ensure that no anger or even discontent arises. On the eve of the Great Depression, in the highly polarized 1920s, there had been plenty of labor organizers and radical activists around to rail about the excesses of the rich and the misery of the poor. In the 21st century, a very different and more numerous breed of ideologues promulgated the opposite message, that all is well within our deeply unequal society, and, for those willing to make the effort, about to get much, much better. The motivators and other purveyors of positive thinking had good news for people facing economic ruin from the constant churning of the job market. Embrace change, no matter how terrifying. Grasp it as an opportunity. In our absolute determination to combat pain, we also forget that pain is socially mediated. Pain is a reflection of socioeconomic distortions, which leave psychological as well as physical traces. Analgesics, prescribed by the dozen, mask the social conditions that create the pain in the first place. The strictly medical and pharmacological treatment of pain prevents pain from becoming eloquent, even critical. It deprives pain of its character as an object, as something social. The palliative society immunizes itself against criticism through medically induced numbness or numbness produced through mass consumption. Social media and computer games have an anesthetic effect. Permanent social anesthesia prevents insight and reflection. It even represses the truth. In Negative Dialectics, Adorno writes, "The need to lend voice to suffering is a condition of all truth. For suffering is objectivity that weighs upon the subject. Its most subjective experience is objectively mediated." The dispositif of happiness isolates us. It leads to the depoliticization of society and the disappearance of solidarity. Each person has to look after his or her own happiness. Happiness becomes a private matter. Suffering is understood to be the result of personal failure. Instead of revolution, we thus get depression. Working on our own soul as best we can, we lose sight of the social relations that lead to social malformations. Tortured by fear and anxiety, we blame not society, but ourselves. The catalyst for revolution, however, is shared pain. The neoliberal dispositif of happiness nips it in the bud. The palliative society depoliticizes pain by medicalizing and privatizing it. The social dimension of pain is thus suppressed and repressed. Chronic pain, a pathological phenomenon of the burnout society, does not give rise to protest. In the neoliberal society, tiredness is apolitical. It is a tiredness of the I, a symptom of the overstretching of the narcissistic subject of performance. Tiredness isolates us instead of binding us together into a we. I tiredness must be distinguished from we tiredness, which is the product of a community. I tiredness is the best defense against revolution. The neoliberal dispositif of happiness reifies happiness. Happiness is not just a collection of positive feelings that promises enhanced performance. It cannot be captured by the logic of optimization. What characterizes happiness is the fact that it is not at one's disposal. Inherent in it is a certain negativity. True happiness is only possible as fractured. What stops happiness becoming reified is precisely pain, and pain gives happiness endurance. Pain bears happiness. Painful happiness is not an oxymoron. Any intensity is painful. Passion binds pain and happiness together. Deep happiness contains a moment of suffering. Pain and happiness, as Nietzsche says, are two siblings and twins who either grow up together or remain small together. Where pain is suppressed, happiness is attenuated, becoming a dull contentment. Those who are unreceptive to pain close themselves off from deep happiness. The one who is open to pain Nietzsche describes as follows: the plethora of kinds of suffering falls down like an infinite blizzard on such a human being, just as the strongest lightning flashes of pain discharge on him. Only in this condition, always open to pain from all sides and down to the deepest level, can he be open to the subtlest and highest kinds of happiness.